that messes with your, internal temperature, your core temperature, your temperature.
Good afternoon. It is Monday, April 8th at 4:45 with a quorum in the chamber. I call this Human Resources Committee to order. We'll start with number one, approval of the March 11th, 2024 minutes. The minutes are in your packet. Any questions, concerns? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to accept. Motion by Herbst, second by Gisselman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Number two is the Human Resources Report for March 2024. It's in your packet. Any questions at all for Ann today? Okay. All right. We'll put that on file. I am going to change the order. So because so many people are in the chamber and I know it's for number 5, I'm moving number 5 to number 3. So discussion and possible action, approving the addition of 2 police officer positions for the Wausau Police Department. I know people asked to give public comment. I will accept public comment. People can come up one by one, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes. So if anybody wishes to give public comment on this item, you can start right now.
Hi, my name is Dave Ackman. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. Address is 209 West Washington Street. Tonight I'm here on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors and the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce to express our support to hire 2 additional police officers to address the homeless issue here. Now, this is more about public safety and having a vibrant business environment and a safe environment for our citizens. You know, where we're at 209 West Washington, we are right there at the entrance to downtown, and I'm going to share some stories with you. We've had numerous break-ins at the powerhouse where I've had to vacate homeless individuals. They use the facilities when the facilities don't work. Same thing at the depot. Just last week, when we were hosting our Rotary, business leaders in Wausau, Wisconsin, one of the members of Rotary says, Dave, take a look out the window, and I did, and I opened up the shade. There's a homeless gentleman, and I know that because he has all his things with him, and he's smoking crack. Smoking crack right outside the chamber window. I went around. I didn't want to raise a ruckus with everybody there. I went around and I asked the gentleman to move on. Point is, at what point is this community going to step up to provide the resources to ensure a public, safe environment for our citizens and our businesses? This is not about the criminalization of homelessness. This is about giving the police department enough support to engage and to help Tracy and the CART team to identify these folks that need help. This is a solution right now. You have a partner on the backside of this in the 2025 fiscal year to use the funds that are designated ARPA, that you can use these to give the chief what he needs to help Tracy and what the CART teams need, so that officers from around the community aren't being redispatched to a place where they should be serving other communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Sarah Watson, 412 North Fifth Ave, also District 8 Alder. Homelessness and the spillover costs associated with are things we need to address. as a council. But I feel adding 2 new patrol officers is only a very instant short-term solution. Maybe a compromise could be reached to address short-term actions with long-range goals. Approving 1 officer and 1 outreach specialist could be a compromise. The financing discussion will take place tomorrow in finance, but I think like the consideration of ARPA and the donations could be considered tomorrow. But in the meantime, my ask is that the council could begin working on a long-range plan. The plan should move homeless outreach under economic development due to its connection with the CDA and also the needed housing solutions. This shift could create a director position, so another director with the HR committee could work on and move the community outreach specialist under that director with an ED. I have a job description. Granted, I put it in ChatGPT, and I know you guys could come up with a better idea. But a director of homelessness service could be a really good opportunity for us to start something to address our homelessness issue, and also potentially partner with the county eventually, similar to how the Parks Department is partnering with the Park Commission. Using ARPA funds for both positions through 2026, since we did get an extension on how long those employee positions can be paid for, will give the city the time to work with the county to establish a split contribution contract, like I said, in a similar vein as parks. The true need is transitional housing with case management. We're not equipped to just rely on housing first as a main task. The focus on that missing middle, we need a director whose position is to navigate the relationships with the county, nonprofits, and federal, state, and grants to fund and move that process forward. A clear plan needs to be addressed as soon as possible, and I'm hoping a COW can be convened where we actually lay out a strategic plan with steps outlining metrics that we can check off as we go, and also responsible parties so we can get this off the ground. So thank you.
Hi, Nancy Stencil, 223-281 Azalea Road, Wausau. And again, I come before you to say that I really feel this is more about enforcement than it is assisting people. After listening to the Health and Human Services Committee meeting on the county level from April 3rd, we really, I feel, need to look at a hierarchy of needs. Food, shelter, and safety, then the rest. And to do this, you have to establish trust. And that doesn't happen in 5 minutes. And it's about meeting people where they're at, not where you think they need to be. What we have heard in those last committee meetings minutes were, we'll get you help, or you can find a community that is more tolerant. That, to me, that's forcing services. And AODA is hard to come by, let alone a forcible service. There are only just so many places that we have available. And where does that money come from if you don't have money? It doesn't come from the individuals. They don't have it. And you look, our services in Marathon County are limited for that. L.E. Phillips over in Chippewa is closed. And then we tend to send people back out into the same community, same circumstances they left. It's like sending a drunk to a bar, you know. There needs to be more of a coordination of services. I don't feel that we need more police. We need more services, and we need more case managers. Services have been cut all over. Case managers are up to their neck in people. We need more of them. Day services, where are they? Clubhouse has been defunded. And then there's talk about a paramedic asking, you know, these folks when they last saw a doctor. Well, if I'm looking for my next meal, I guess I don't care when I've been to a doctor last. Granted, I know they use emergency services. People tend to do that don't have insurance as well. And again, I think the immediate needs or the immediate goals need to be met. And I don't pretend to have all the answers to this. Perhaps tiny homes with case management, but certainly enforcement isn't one of them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brenda Challoner. I live at 1242 South 9th Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. And I also disagree with hiring more police officers to basically, as I look at it, criminalizing somebody for being homeless. Why? The state of Wisconsin Department of Corrections, they assist offenders or parolees, former criminals, okay? They give them residential services, transitional housing, community registration program, reintegration programs, substance abuse programs. Some need sex offender program services, day report centers, emergency housing, employment, community services, vocational programs, OWI court assistance, cognitive intervention, domestic violence services, and employment. And this is just a few of the things that they already give people who are criminals that they're trying to reintegrate to the system. Yet, you're trying to criminalize people for being poor. I think that's illegal and unconstitutional to begin with. As it is right now, we have seen a 92.9% increase in housing cost, whether it be you buying or renting. Why? Gentrification. If you want to be part of a Roto Club or a church program or a community thing, you know, where fancy clothes and suits are what make up this community, shame on you. Sitting on these seats, thinking you can judge other people for just being poor. Shame on you. I mean, yes, we have Section 8. Oh, wow. You know what the late waiting list on Section 8 right now? 8 years. 8 years to try to get some help from there because of lack of funding. But they'll help the criminals. You know, you're talking about people who are poor. They deal with discrimination, gentrification, as I mentioned, limited health care, limited food, if they can find any, unsanitary living conditions, violence, trouble staying safe, constant fear or paranoia, exposure to severe weather. How many people died this year so far, or do you even know? There was 2 people that they found in the river this last year. I kind of get a feeling, you know, maybe were they suicidal or thrown in there or something. Okay, I constantly hear other people that are homeless going, yeah, we lost another friend. And yet none of it's reported. None of it. The only ones I hear about the people dying of the weather and being homeless is from them. You guys are all staying silent. Shame on you. Okay? There are also drugs and alcohol and illegal behaviors to survive. Oh yeah, they might be on crack. They might be on some sort of thing. But you know what? If you can't feel yourself, you have less fear of dying because you might just die that night. You know, might as well put yourself something in there because if I die, I won't have to feel it. And they can feel the numbness of trying to survive. Mental illness, depression, suicidal, and like I said, again, death comes with this, the homelessness. And you guys are all sitting there, let's criminalize them. Let's hire 2 police officers to help them. When there's other programs out there that can help. You're already doing it for criminals. Do it for somebody for being poor. You can have them maybe use vocational programming to help with the Housing for Humanity. You know, you can expand that program. Get them jobs, get them help with housing. You can fund more of the Section 8. Put your money there. You can also, there are 3 houses I know right now that have been sitting forever on the market. And they're multifamily houses that I think you guys got like $500,000 to help with, you know, the shelters net. You guys could actually purchase these homes and where the Department of Health and Human Services can get in there and actually do some help. Put some families in there that need it so they can have showers. They can get resources they need. They can get counseling they need. They can get what already the parolees have. Do something like that to help these people. You don't want them on the streets? Help them. Don't criminalize them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Terry Killian. I reside at 133 East Thomas Street in Wausau. I'm here this evening to express to the community my very strong opposition to the hiring of 2 additional police officers for the purpose of targeting one socioeconomic segment of our population. I guess the question for the Human Resource Committee, if my understanding is correct, is to decide if these positions are necessary, and if the committee deems the positions are necessary, is ARPA funding appropriate for these positions? It is my understanding that federally funded ARPA dollars are intended for the purpose of assisting those who need financial help, not vilifying them, not criminalizing them, and not making their lives even more difficult. I hope that this committee will think very, very long and hard about the purpose and real necessity for these officers and about the use of ARPA dollars to fund such a purpose. Because by giving this proposal complete and thorough examination, it seems the only reasonable conclusion is to reject the proposal. Thank you.
My name is Sandy Kelch. I live at 802 Augusta Avenue in Wausau. So it's no secret I'm here tonight to oppose the hiring of 2 officers. We have a resource in Tracy Rieger, and we're not fully utilizing it because of the way that her position is structured. And so I agree with Sarah. We need to separate Tracy from the police department. We need to hire case managers in which she can mentor with her great experience and knowledge in dealing with the unhoused. Not going to read the rest of what I wrote because it will be repeated tonight by many others, but I do want to tell a story since we started the night with a story. On Sunday, I came across someone that that I've worked with for a number of years. When I first met this gentleman, he was someone that I felt was unreachable. He would not talk. He would not accept help, services, nothing. Then we had an innovative program in which he participated in, and he was housed with case management. He was a success. He got his own housing, had a job, was clean and sober and doing well. And we stopped the service. The program ended. He was not transferred to another program. His services just stopped. And he became homeless again. And he tried to stay clean and sober, and he did for a long time. So this whole idea that these are lazy people that are just druggies and all they want to do is do drugs and smoke crack and cause problems is bull. He tried hard to stay clean and sober, but there was no place for him to go, no services for him to use, no housing, no case management, and after a while, he fell back into drugs and alcohol. We failed him. And if you hire police officers to continue to criminalize victims of society, the most vulnerable in our community, you're supporting criminalizing poverty and illness and mental illness and cognitive disabilities and learning disabilities. You are part of the problem if you think this is the solution. We need case management. We need Tracy Rieger to be her own department and to utilize her effectively and fully in fighting homelessness and not the unhoused. There's a big difference between eliminating homelessness and eliminating the unhoused. I beg you to not do this and to do something different and bold, something that works and has been proven to work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carla Joseph. Address is 5205 Sherman Street, apartment number 23. I volunteer currently with the Marathon County Outreach Task Force. I'm a statistic person, so I looked up, went to the HUD website, and right now they estimate nationwide we have about 653,000 homeless people. I'm guessing you could probably triple that number and be more accurate. I keep hearing that we assume that people that are homeless are have mental illness or addiction problems, and that is one of the demographics. The largest demographic of growing homeless individuals are people my age. I'm 66, retired. The greatest number of people becoming homeless are elderly, and that number is not shrinking. It's getting larger and larger. So from a retirement standpoint, not everybody that's homeless has got mental illness or addiction problems. But that's what you always hear of, and that's when you tell somebody is homeless, that's what they immediately think. But that's not the actual statistics. If you want to know what I'm talking about, please go to the Google homeless statistics and you will see the HUD website. It has all the information and the demographics on this. One of the biggest reasons that they're nationwide in big cities that they're finding is the biggest reason for homelessness, which again is not the mental illness and addiction, it's affordable housing. I'm renting a small little one-bedroom apartment here in Wausau because I have a home down in Illinois and I live up here for my health care. $800 with heat and water included is great, but that's still not affordable housing for somebody who has trouble finding a job or is retired living on Social Security. That is not affordable housing. So, and healthcare costs on top of that. So I heard a recent feature on NPR talking about why multiple cities are having such a large influx of homeless people. One of the big reasons is years ago, and you can even think of this in Wausau, there were boarding houses. There were places where you could go and rent a room for a weekly fee. You had multiple families being able to live in a dwelling. Most ordinances across the country are now prohibiting that. You could only have one family living in a home. And the boarding houses are not being licensed so that somebody could find a room to rent. So that's one of the issues that was on this NPR thing. I had a conversation at a Marathon County task outreach program when we were looking for places to shelter people in the wintertime. I had a conversation with Chief Barnes, and I see that he's here, thank you. And one of the things we talked about was, he said that there was resources available to people who were homeless to get them into housing. Via Tracy's word, telling somebody that, you know, on her say-so, you know, please give this person a chance to get into housing. They get into housing, but there's no case managers to help the needs of somebody who's homeless with visits to hospital visits, whatever the needs are. There was no case management to help people who were suddenly in a home. With that, and he said there's not the funding for case managers to do that, but that would be what would possibly keep people in their homes once they would get in there, because you have to think of all the things that are going on with somebody that has this going on. The Patriot Act, when the Patriot Act was passed, one of the things in the Patriot Act was you could not get a post office box if you don't have an address. Well, if you're homeless and the only address you can get is a post office box, so you have an address to give a potential employer, well, now you've just made it harder for that person to be able to get a job. So I can go on, but case managers, I find that you want to hire 2 police officers and be citing them, and it is an issue. There are violations, but how are police officers, and I would pose this question to Chief Barnes as well, how are police officers going to help that homeless individual get help and support and to be able to change their situation so they're not homeless? In the cities that I looked up the statistics where they're decreasing homeless, the number one reason that they were able to do that is getting more affordable housing and having support for the individuals, along with education to try to get them maybe into a training position where they could get a job. So the answer is not punitive response to homeless, which I'm a big law enforcement friend, but that's not the answer, and this problem isn't going to go away. We could hire 20 new more officers and not solve the problem with homeless. If we could, there wouldn't be 653 plus thousand people across the country that are homeless. And it's not, and I'm trying to make the point, it's not just mental illness and addiction. It is, and it's coming for us old people. So, thank you.
I don't see anybody else. Oh, sorry. I guess two people.
My name is Kaylee Wood. I live at 745 N Street here in Wausau, and I'm here tonight to share my opposition for hiring 2 new officers. So what we are seeing here in Wausau is the symptoms of untreated mental illness and substance use disorder. Those experiencing homelessness have many barriers in their lives, as we all know. And systemically, all of our communities face inaccessibility to limited resources. To mend the gap, what we need are more outreach providers who can assist with accessing those services. Criminalizing the symptoms of untreated mental health and substance use disorder with lack of accessibility and limited resources will only perpetuate the cycle of homelessness here in our community. Jail should not be the mending gap for services that people are struggling to access outside of jail. We need to take a proactive approach in preventing or intervening before minor violations occur, and we should be working on reducing our recidivism rates and helping those out of homelessness and not keeping them where they're at. Jails are correctional facilities and not psychiatric facilities, and we should not be relying on incarcerating individuals so that they have an opportunity to seek treatment. Research continuously shows that those incarcerated have high rates of psychiatric disorders, and in 44 out of our 50 states, there are more people incarcerated with mental illnesses than the populations currently at open and operating psychiatric care facilities. More charges reduces the access to housing, some public services, employments, and other opportunities that impact their daily life upon release after jail, continuing the narrative of hopelessness and social exclusion for those who are unhoused. We have one community resource outreach specialist who assists our population experiencing homelessness, but that population is growing, as we know. One person should not be held responsible for supporting this growing and vulnerable population. Repeated losses of housing also continues the overuse of our services in our community that are already limited. We need more people in our community outreach positions to be more impactful on the rate in which our community members are entering homelessness. We should be progressive and be having conversations about creating roles such as a jail discharge planner to link clients to housing, medication access, medical and mental health care, among other things, before being released from our jails. Meaningful reentry will ensure our resources continue to be available for those in need, reduce repeat services, and provide opportunities here in our community. We will also have safer communities by removing the circumstances in which we'll continue the cycle of homelessness, mental health, substance use disorder, and crime. Without creating more supports for these individuals, we are only perpetuating the cycle which we currently see here in our community. We are simply housing individuals in the jail temporarily to remove them from the streets. This approach of adding more police officer presence to manage one specific population here in Wausau continues the us versus them mentality, which we see play out all the time. And it should not be our only option to be explored. We all carry a responsibility to those in our community to ensure that this population has the tools, resources, connections, and opportunities so that we can create a just community for all. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jay. I live at 117 Sturgeonetti Road. I practice primarily criminal defense in the local courts, and unfortunately, over 17 years or so of doing this, I've represented many homeless residents of Wausau. Have a few on my docket right now, many of whom I represent upon appointment by the judges here in Marathon County, because given the current caseloads in the courts, the public defender's office, where indigent individuals get representation from, they simply don't have lawyers for individuals just under the caseloads we're dealing with now, people facing charges. And it's been this way for quite some time. I'm sure the chief is aware of this as well. We already have a criminal justice system in Marathon County that is larger than it has ever been in terms of judges and resources put into this, and we are simply overwhelmed with our existing caseload. To try and move the problems of homeless individuals more into the legal system, or to enforce the law quite explicitly more rigorously on these individuals in a certain neighborhood downtown would only exacerbate that problem. And I think two things are very important here. One is you shouldn't even be considering this spending and new staffing absent a real emergency. And the chief has framed this in terms of it being an emergency. I think in one of the meetings I heard him say something like, if we don't get on this right now, then 5 years from now, we're facing a catastrophe, a downtown that can't be developed economically, et cetera. That's a little rich, considering that this city, this county, this state has been highlighting concerns of homelessness for many years now. And, the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce, as well as our local police department, and the city government, county government, have all been part of a homelessness task force. If you recall, you implemented this plan, getting all these agencies together, brainstorming, researching how to address this. They came up with many suggestions. Many have been outlined by some of my neighbors here today. Case management, housing after shelter space becomes unavailable, et cetera. Nowhere in those reports did it say increased enforcement of ordinances or criminal statutes. This is a new ask from a new chief, and for at least 4 or 5 years, when he was a deputy chief, Chief Barnes has been addressing this issue publicly. And right now, to say that there's some make or break emergency, we need 2 new officers, 2% of our staff, something like that, or the cat's out of the bag. That's just, it's some rhetoric to get the spending done, to get the money out of the ARPA bill while it's sitting here and unallocated. I would caution as well that the chief's intention here is likely to have the exact opposite effect of what he's telling you it would have. If, in fact, there is a large increase of homeless individuals from outside of this community, injecting them into the criminal court system will only ensure that they stay here. While they are on bond, they are forced to be here. They have to go to court. If they get put on probation, they stay here, whether they had residence previously in Milwaukee or Chicago or wherever. Once they get in the criminal justice system, we force them to stay here. And so addressing their issues, substance abuse, housing, et cetera, we're going to be paying for that. So, we just elected a new mayor. We just elected some new council people. I think it would make sense to include this ask, 2 new officers, with the regular budgetary discussions that go on, so it can be ranked and compared to the opportunities that you will lose by funding these 2 officers. Like any other spending in the city, this deserves to be evaluated against any other spending. And I would note, I think when I was graduating high school in 1998, I think Chief Barnes was starting as an officer right around that time as well. At that point, Wausau, I believe, had 60 officers in the Wausau Police Department, somewhere around 38,000 population, 60 officers. We now have 79. In addition, we have the Yellow Jacket guys. We didn't have all of that back in the 90s either. I'm wondering why 2,000 new citizens needed 30% more police, and yet we're being told that that's not enough. Just evaluate this with everything else, punt it until the budget cycle.
Kurt Deininger, 224175 Arrowhead Trail, Ringgold, Wisconsin. For about 5 years now, I've been working with the unhoused in the Wausau area. And I've watched closely the statements and the videos of Police Chief Barnes of what his ask for and what this needs are. And I can tell you that I find it interesting that about a year and a half ago was the last time I came and addressed the city on this issue, but it was when we were talking about doing fencing. And I find it, for lack of a better word, almost laughable, because at that time it was to fence people out of their areas that didn't have a place to live of where they're living. And since things have happened recently in the last year, they've been going in the woods and getting kicked out of the woods. Where did you think they were going to go? I mean, seriously. I mean, you went into the woods and took their tents and destroyed their camps. They had nowhere else to live, and now you're complaining that they're in the cities with all the businesses. I was in business for over 20 years in this community. I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been part of other business organizations, so I do understand the concern and stuff for the businesses, but the heavy-handedness is what's got us to where we're at. And taking it another step to just get more heavy-handedness, the people that I see every day, they're in the vicious circle because all that happens to them is that they can't go to the park and they can't be sitting there, or now they're a criminal. Now they're getting arrested. Now they're getting fined, and then they can't pay those fines, and you're just putting them through this vicious circle. One of the things he mentioned is the problem with bathrooms. A year and a half ago or further when we were in here, we addressed the bathroom issue too. You guys still don't have any bathrooms. Throw a porta potty in the parking ramp or something. You don't want them to go to the bathroom in there? There's one porta potty at a park that they're allowed to use, and they're not allowed to be in the park anymore. So where do you expect them to go? I understand the concern and the need, but to just keep criminalizing them and putting in the vicious cycle of where it's going is not going to be a solution to all this. You know, there's more than just, the other thing is they keep saying that people are coming to Wausau because there's too many services and there's too many people out helping people. First of all, you can't give enough help to people that are dying on the streets if they don't get the resources to just basically stay alive with coats, food, and shelters. The shelters that we have in town did not grow by any means after the COVID evictions that happened and all the people. We ended up getting a new facility that had the same or less beds. People have to choose because there's not enough room for them to bring their gear in. They have to choose between all their worldly possessions and going to the shelter and having a roof over their head at night, or going into a shelter where they have the risk of being traumatized with somebody else who has put them in a bad situation. I'm against adding the officers because I think there are much better options to go along with to help the people rather than just continue to criminalize them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Renee Krings. I'm here tonight as an individual who works in the downtown 209 Washington Street. I don't have comments prepared. However, I'm here because I care about our community and I want to be part of the solution. I've taken a lot of time over the last week just to spend some time educating myself about the issue that's taking place in our community. I've spent some time watching the city council meetings over the last few weeks, and I've also spent some time, I watched a community forum that took place, the Bridge Street Mission hosted a forum where they brought in a speaker. He was a former czar who spent a lot of time looking at this throughout the nation. And one of the things that I really appreciated about this speaker was the fact that the first thing that he stated after spending some time in our community is that we do have a caring community. We have a lot of individuals who care about the well-being of our community and are wanting to be part of the solution. The other thing that I really appreciated about this speaker is he's looking at root cause and he's looking at best practices that have taken place. And out of all of the things that I saw and things that I've heard tonight, he did agree that there's a lot of wonderful resources in our community and it's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution or approach. However, it does take housing, it takes treatment, it takes long-term treatment. And the one thing that he also said is that we need to manage and get this under control. So today is our opportunity to address some of these concerns. And if we have an opportunity to do that, I think a lot of the great resources that we have in our community are only going to be more effective. And so with saying that, the way that my outcome, what I ended up resolving on for myself personally as an individual, is I do support the hiring of these resources, and I don't look at it as a political issue. I'm trying to remove the emotions. I'm really looking at it as a first response, and how can those individuals serve as a first response and partner with the other resources in our community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Hersey. I live at 207 West Eldridge Street. I work for the city. I'm the director of our public transportation department here. And I came from Portland, Oregon. And Portland, Oregon, when I first started in public transportation there, was going through an issue very similar to what Wausau is going through. They chose the avenue of not adding law enforcement. And what I saw happen to my employees in the transit department was a 500% spike in assaults. What I saw happen was the city of Portland was the bus transportation for the Portland Public Schools. They lost that contract because the buses were no longer safe. And it is not completely because of homeless people, and it is not all homeless people. It is not as an overall whole, but there is a sect that has mental illness, that has drug addiction, and with that carries oftentimes violence, and we can't help the people if we can't keep the rest of the community safe as well. So adding 2 new officers to help maintain the law, help maintain the order in the city, not necessarily just running off homeless people, but dealing with those that are breaking the law, is very important. And then the city can, at the same time, work towards helping those that are homeless through no fault of their own, those that are elderly and have lost their housing. That's a completely different conversation. Those that have found themselves in an addiction place, helping them get out of their addiction, find transitional housing, find those sorts of resources. That is different, but the law enforcement aspect has to be there. I've watched this happen, and now Portland is trying and fighting to get a grasp on the problem, but they've already opened the Pandora's box. They've let the cat out of the bag, whichever statement you want to use. I don't want to see assaults rise in the city. I don't want the assaults on public transportation to become an issue. I don't want assaults on police officers and citizens to become a greater issue for the city of Wausau. I know I've only lived here a short time, but I really like the city. I think it is a great place. I think it is full of great people, very compassionate, very caring people, and there is a way to help the homeless empathetically, for sure, to do what we can to help them. But by not allowing the police to do their job, we're not serving anybody in the community. Thank you.
Mark Craig, 3246 North 8th Street. I've been in downtown Wausau for 27 years, and I'm here tonight to support Chief Barnes and his effort to add a couple officers. And I don't think it's an effort to criminalize homelessness. I think it's a topic that requires a lot of compassion, and I have a lot of compassion for people that are unhoused. I interact with them almost on a daily basis. I know a lot of them by first name basis. But there's a range of people that are unhoused, right? I mean, there's mental illness that really need help, right? Some of them don't want help. Some of them really don't trust anyone. And then there's those that also have drug addictions. But there's a whole range of people that are unhoused in our community. And what Chief Barnes is trying to do, I think, is have some additional resources to address those that have gone beyond what we want to see happen in our downtown with really criminal activity. Those that need help and want help, I applaud all the efforts to get caseworkers and put together all the resources that we can, because it's a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted solution. It's not just one thing. But this is one thing we can do, and that the funds are available, and we should take advantage of those funds. And I hope this council and this committee supports Chief Barnes, because I have witnessed myself Wausau PD with a tremendous amount of compassion as people have acted up in the downtown area, and they've responded to that. They've treated them with tremendous kindness as they've tried to find resources for them. Tracy is one of my heroes. She has done so much for our community and does not have the resources to do all that she needs to do. So I applaud the ladies that spoke tonight. I think you're right on point with a lot of things you said, but this is one more thing we can do, and I don't think it's criminalizing homelessness. I think it's adding resources where they need to be. Thank you.
Good evening. Craig Ellenbrook with with Myron Construction. So I'm representing our office downtown here, which is at 500 First Street, Suite 4000 in the Dudley Tower. And I just wanted to speak on behalf of some of the sentiments that were presented tonight by Mr. Ekman and Renee and the Director of Transportation. We at Myron are also in support of looking at increasing the officers in this community. And I sit here tonight really just to speak on behalf of our employees, because I think it does help at times to hear stories. And over the last month and a half, it has changed drastically within the tower and some of the things that we're dealing with. And we've had 2 situations in the last month where homeless individuals have come into our office space and tried to interact with some of our employees. And quite honestly, our employees have felt very uncomfortable in that situation. And they look to me now and say, you know, what are we going to be able to do to protect people in this office and in this environment here? So I agree with what Mark had just mentioned as well. I mean, I have sympathy for the people in this community, and by no means am I in a position where I know all the solutions and have all the answers. But I think this is a great first step to help us try to control some of these situations in the community and help us in our downtown, because ultimately I, as a person managing that office for our company, want to make sure that our employees do feel safe when they come to work every day and that they feel protected in that environment. So I appreciate the consideration and support the decision by the chief. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Vicki Harness. I live at 1240 South 9th Avenue in Wausau, Wisconsin. I'm currently the Executive Director for the Community Outreach Task Force. We have the Marty bus on River Drive, and we feed the homeless on Wednesdays and Fridays. We also provide them with survival gear, some companionship for a couple hours. And during the winter, we watch movies on the bus. They very rarely ever have anyone treat them like human beings. My volunteers at the bus are mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers who spend time and energy providing support and kindness to those who rarely get it anywhere else. The idea of having more police officers to arrest them, give them more fines so they can get farther in debt and make it harder and harder to dig out of the hole they're in is not helpful. We wouldn't have such a problem with them downtown if they had a place to go. And I think the ARPA funds would be better served to give them a place to go. Chippewa Falls has a Hope Village, it's called. It's a tiny village that's been doing exceptional work where people are given housing with services, case management services, treatment services, counseling, employment services. We have places that will help the homeless with work if they have a place to go. I guess there's so many things that could be said, and and everybody else has already said many of them. But I just hope that we would look at better use of those dollars. Thank you.
My name is Patty Kittle. I live at 3941 Troy Street here in Wausau. I had no intention of speaking tonight. I'm a business owner. Currently, I am a private investigator. I specialize in criminal defense work. And I want to piggyback a little bit on what Jay said and what Vicki said. And pardon me, I'm a little nervous because this is impromptu. I don't know the answers, but what I want to know is, when did it become a crime to be poor? But for the grace of God would have been me almost 30 years ago. I was fortunate and I did not get that. But what I wanted to say is, we talk about doing crack outside the window and coming into the buildings. And when I owned my business downtown, I started out renting from Mark Craig at Washington Square, and then I moved up. I had homeless people, and all they wanted you to do was treat them with a little respect. They would pick up garbage in front of my door when I was over on Washington Street because I said hello. I have gone and interviewed clients and witnesses, and they have told me I was the first one in years to speak to them like a human being and like they were a person. I don't think, we can keep giving them tickets and we can keep sending them to jail, and because I do SPD work, well, shoot, I'm going to benefit from that. I already have 34 open SPD cases. I'll take on more. But I'm not sure that's a good use for our funds. We need to help. And if someone had not helped me almost 30 years ago, I would have been one of those people. Because I'm going to tell you, the mental health, I have clients that tell me they got into the drugs and then the crime that followed because they lost their health care. They couldn't afford their Xanax or their Haldol or whatever it was they had to have. And it was easier to numb it with the meth or the heroin or whatever it is they took. The alcohol, she's right. It's easier to numb it. A six-pack is a lot cheaper than $800 a month rent. So I just ask you to consider that. I'm not anti-police. I'm not. My father-in-law is former sheriff. My brother-in-law was a former police officer. My great-grandfather was a chain gang guard. You know, it goes throughout my life. So I'm not against police. I am against criminalizing being poor and making mental health issues a crime and not being able to afford the help you need to be a crime.
Okay, I think that's it. Chief Barnes, would you like to address this committee?
I'll start by focusing on the positive. There's clearly a whole bunch of people that care about this situation in Wausau. I can tell you that our police department is one of them. And there's a lot to unpack in the comments that you just heard. What may surprise people is the amount of comments I just heard that I totally agree with. There are some I don't, and we can talk about that in regards to this request. But the things that I do agree on, and this council and anyone who's taken the time at my open invite to come meet with me, whether they be elected officials or members of the community, or asked me to come meet with them, I have taken every opportunity. And it is to advocate that Number one, my request here is not a solution to homelessness in this community whatsoever. I've made that abundantly clear. The solutions to homelessness I've articulated. There are different types of people and different types of homelessness. I categorize them based on our police experience. So my definition is 3 categories. We have individuals utilizing resources who are working really hard to claw their way out of homelessness, and we do our best to support them, and I congratulate them. We have other individuals who are not availing themselves of resources, but to be honest with you, they're not committing crimes, they're not violating our ordinances, and they don't interact a whole lot with our police officers. They may interact with Tracy Rieger, who you've heard about tonight, and with a goal of motivating them to utilize resources and to improve the situation. But they're not a problem for our police department. And then there's another component that I would consider chronically homeless, who are resistive to resources that would help them leave homelessness, but they are committing crimes and ordinance violations and really dramatically impacting the quality of life in our parks, in our library, and in our parking ramps. So when we talk about homelessness as a whole, again, this is not a solution. The solution needs to, I heard affordable housing. I've said that before. We're short 5,000 units of housing in this county. It has dramatically impacted the price of housing, and that is an issue to be addressed. I can't fix that from the police department. Mental health and AODA resources that are available, that are robust, and can be delivered to people in the situation they're in. And I'll clarify that because I don't want it to be confusing. Getting someone an appointment to potentially get AODA treatment or mental health treatment in this community does not happen next week from the point in time in which they are willing to accept those resources. And within this population, we don't get to schedule an appointment a month out and expect them to be there at 2:15 to fill out the appropriate paperwork to start going down the path of recovery or case management or whatever those resources are. So when we talk about resources in this community, they have to be able to be delivered in an effective way, and that way is not consistent with how much of the rest of our community would receive those services. I advocate all day long, every day, that we address those issues. And by we, I don't necessarily know that it's this council that can fix that, or this city, or the county. Anybody that wants to look, I spoke to the Health and Human Services Committee at the county because one of the things I heard from this council was, where is the county in this process and how can they be more involved? And I took that opportunity and that invitation, and that was one of the issues I addressed with them, is how do we get the county on board and engaged, and in what ways can they do that? And there are some creative opportunities that exist out there that can significantly impact, and we need the partnership of the county to do that. And so that was a first step in that process. I speak to the county on a regular basis, and the county administrator, Lance Leonard, and we talk about what I see as a significant gap. Tracy does spectacular work, and at the next public health and safety meeting, she's not coming with a success story. She's going to come with some of the failures where we have, and by we I mean mostly her, has successfully got people housed, and how those turned out to be failures because those individuals didn't have the supports or resources or ability to successfully be housed. And we're right back to where we started from, if not worse. So the transitional housing that has supportive components that are built into it, and those supports need to be tailored to different individuals in different situations. I brought a proposal that we partnered with CW Solutions to this body to be able to talk about what that is. And now I'm seeking a way for the county that might have funding solutions for transitional housing using different federal Medicaid dollars to be able to help put some of those things in place. So the upside for me sitting here and listening to public comment, whether it's for or against what we want to do, is I realize there are people that care. And if I focus on the things that we agree on, there are many. Some of the things we don't agree on, I didn't hear, and I don't have a solution to bad behavior occurring in our downtown that's impacting the ability of people to be effective doing business, to impact the ability of people to utilize resources in our community, like our parks, like our library, and we're seeing a negative impact. And what we're seeing is violations of our ordinances and violations of our laws. And the question is that okay? Because the alternative is we turn a blind eye to that behavior that's occurring. I have no interest in criminalizing homelessness or making a person's situation worse than it is. Our police officers, though, are tasked with enforcing the laws, ordinances, and standards of this community, and that is what they are trying to do. Those of you that took my invitation and came and watched just the last 2 or 3 weeks of video of our engagement in one particular location in downtown saw behaviors, and the answer isn't sending case managers or Tracy to deal with them. These are situations that require multiple police officers to be able to respond. Some of them involve weapons, some of them involve violence, some of them just involve the violation of our ordinances. The funds that we've allocated, strike that. The funds that have been volunteered to this community to help fund these 2 officers for 2025, it's not funds to this community or this council to use how you please, and so that's for officers. So if there's a desire to reallocate those dollars, that would require going back to foundations. I have listened, I spoke with Alder Watson earlier today, and we looked at, are there better ways to facilitate resources, and where does Tracy fit into being an employee of this city? And I absolutely am open to all those different solutions. What I will tell you is I would really struggle as a responsible police chief to not have this be a team of officers, because when our officers are responding to these situations over the last 6 months specifically, they're not one officer calls. They're not one officer calls because of the behaviors that we're seeing or the potential safety issues. And again, I'll reiterate that I'm coming forward outside my desire. I don't want to be here asking for more officers. I really wish I didn't feel like the department needed additional staff to address this issue. I'm coming right now because of what we have seen over the last 2 or 3 months as a dramatic increase in the amount of unhoused individuals, and the behaviors that we're seeing are getting more dangerous, and they're creating more issues in our downtown. And so it is simple for me. This isn't a solution, but I know that a police department, their job is to enforce the laws and ordinances. And I know that if we have a team that can focus specifically in the geographic areas where we're seeing laws being broken and ordinances being violated, they can do 2 things. One, they can be more preventative. We can start addressing issues before they become issues instead of being solely responsive, which is what we are right now. We see an issue, we go respond, and we deal with it. Yeah, I heard a comment earlier, this sounds like just enforcement. It is. That's what police officers do. They enforce the law. We will also drive people to resources. We will take every avenue possible to change behavior. We do that whether it's a 16-year-old that's speeding or whether it's people with more significant crimes. Like, I don't want to lock anyone up forever. Contrary to popular belief, it's not a lot of fun. And so we want to get people help. We want to change behavior. And I know that that's possible because we see people in all different types of homelessness in our community, and some are really reducing the quality of life here and others aren't. And so we want a reputation that you don't get to behave that way in our community, and we make our downtown a safe place to be. So it's that simple to me. I looked at this, and the reason I'm here is I look at the behaviors that we're seeing. I ask myself, is that okay in Wausau? And my answer was no. And whose job is it if it's not okay? And the answer is you call the police. And I'm the police chief here saying, giving us 2 additional officers and letting us move forward with that allows me to have those individuals impact that problem in what I think will be the most effective way possible.
Committee questions for Chief Barnes? None? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You brought up the foundation element and what someone had mentioned earlier about potentially reallocating funds to something that perhaps the community felt was a better way to address some of these issues. But then at a later time, it was said that, you know, those are earmarked apparently by the foundation for only doing one thing. And correct me if I'm mistaken, I don't know the dynamics and how the funding unfolded, but is the one thing then to pay for 2 police officers to enforce the types of things downtown that you've been describing, specifically with the unhoused population?
I would say you're partially correct in your assessment. No, number one, the foundation has offered to pay for 2 police officers. They didn't give us flexibility in their offer to split that money and fund other things other than 2 police officers for 2025. And the second half is here just to enforce these things. Part of my communication to the foundation when I asked for a willingness to help us fund this included not only enforcing our laws, standards, and ordinances, but much discussion about how those officers can create positive outcomes with individuals that aren't necessarily taking them to jail. And to be honest with you, those are things we expect of our officers to do right now. And there's lots of stories of our officers working within the unhoused population that don't involve taking someone to jail or issuing an ordinance citation. We're looking to change behavior and ensure that we're not just addressing a small population, comparatively speaking, to the 40,000 residents in Wausau, but we're the police department for the whole city, and we see how that impacts this whole community as well, and we have responsibilities to everyone involved. So I think those are issues where what are some other things these officers are going to be doing that increase the quality of life in our downtown? How do we get people to resources? And how do we ensure that all of our resources aren't going to one specific geographic area or addressing one population of individuals? We want to make sure the entire city stays safe and we're available to them.
Thank you. And then you touched on what was going to be my next question. It was because I'm unfamiliar when the private sector is going to be paying for the salaries of public police officers, and that's occurring apparently outside of like a typical city financial or budget process. How did that work? So who goes to the did they offer to do it themselves? Did someone from the city go to the foundations and say, hey, will you pay for this? Who did that, and how does that work?
Sure, we have a long-standing relationship with the foundations. There are times that foundations call me and ask for a sit-down and talk about what are the issues and how can they be involved. In this particular case, I reached out to them and said they had a desire to have a conversation about what they're seeing as the atrophy of our downtown and our business district, and asked me, what would you do, Matt? And I said, I'd hire 2 cops and put them on a team and have them focus on this. And their offer was to fund those. So that is something I did.
Okay, thank you. So you they brought up atrophy of a business or economic district, and then your suggestion was more police officers that would be paid by the private sector. Is that an accurate summary?
The summary the more accurate statement would be they were willing to fund those officers. The conversation was much more robust than you had just shared. That conversation involved resources, other areas that I felt they could be financially contribute to this community in the form of resources and gaps to be filled. I think they I don't want to speak for them, they're not here, but I really feel like they were willing to fund this right now at a very high level because they felt like that is something there can be an immediate impact, and an immediate impact is necessary in our downtown. So again, I don't want to speak for them, but the fact that they're coming with in excess of $230,000 of funding that in 2025, they've seen these same issues and they feel that it could have a positive impact. The foundations also have a history going back. I have a document that goes back into the early 80s of funding positions and programs within this community to include police officers as well as other staff.
And then just the last kind of composite of questions is based on kind of segments of the unhoused in Wausau. So, and the public tonight talked about how it wasn't exclusively, an issue with citizens that have mental health or alcohol and drug addiction issues. But I am wondering, with the unhoused population in Wausau, what percentage of them would you estimate do have perhaps mental health issues?
Well, I think it'd be absolutely fair to say the majority. So I can't really give you a number, but I think our staff feel like, and they're not trained psychologists but I think based on their interactions and the behaviors and listening to the stories of individuals, because that's something that we do, there's a significant number. I just am not comfortable saying 70% or 60%, but well over half. And I think, I don't have eyes in the back of my head, but those individuals that work with this population, my hope is they're nodding their head in agreement to me that that's the situation.
Would it be similar also for the segment of individuals with alcoholism or alcohol and drug addiction challenges, would you think?
Yeah, I would say individuals that are abusing substances. I mean, some are more chronic than others, but that would definitely, I would also include that's the majority.
And what percentage would you estimate are veterans? Do they over-index?
I would say this, that we have engaged with some veterans over the last several years. We're fortunate in that we have resources within the VA and locally that we can reach out to that are more robust resources and are available to the average unhoused member of our community. I would invite Tracy if maybe she has more specific data on veterans, but I don't think when we look at our unhoused population that everybody matters, but there's not a significant number of them where we're like, there's our veteran population of unhoused in our community.
And then just you've had decades in law enforcement experience. I know the answer, but I kind of like it on the record from the expert. Is my layperson understanding that unhoused individuals are not the only individuals that break and entering or smoke crack? Am I correct? And I don't even know what it looks like to smoke crack. Chamber staff and leadership knew that. I have no idea what that looks like. But so are there people that aren't poor or that break the law and use drugs as well?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Do you keep videos of them that you show people, like wealthy people that you show videos of crimes?
I don't know if that's a rhetorical question, but I would state this for the record, of course, which is anybody that's going to be breaking the law, or if an alder goes to our park and breaks the law, I would expect our officers to address that with them, take appropriate enforcement action. Criminalizing homelessness is rather insulting to police officers because we engage with behaviors. And one of the reasons I separated the population of unhoused in our community early in my comments is there's a significant number of our homeless population that we as officers don't engage with from enforcing anything. Sitting on a park bench is not against the law. We're not engaged with them. That's not something our officers would walk up and deal with. It's the behaviors that they're displaying that we do, and that's true whether you're unhoused or whether you're housed. So to answer your question, we investigate a whole lot of crime, much of which doesn't have to do with our unhoused population, but the crime that we're discussing here today, we see really negatively impacting your district, the downtown, our library. We hear from library staff about the impact on them and the future of the library. We see the result in our parks, and we don't write the ordinances or the laws. We are tasked with enforcing that, and that's what I'm asking for help to do here today.
Thank you for bringing up that last part. It does raise some additional questions from me. So the position or assertion that everything is being enforced kind of equally across the board, I guess perhaps there's an element of semantics or kind of logic contortion there, because I believe what you've been and others have been describing have essentially related to in the past what might be considered vagrancy law. So let's use an example and then talk about why it doesn't make sense to assert that enforcement across the board is either kind of logical or just. So when you have someone sleeping in a park in a tent, yes, we have codes and standards and so forth regarding that, but generally most who would be doing that in town don't have a house or a roof to sleep under, or often even an alternative, like if they go to the shelter one night, don't make the lottery and are turned away. So while that law may apply to everyone, clearly those who are going to be sleeping in parks and public spaces consistently, I would gather, I would even bet dollars to donuts, are really the unhoused. So while that law applies to everyone, we really don't have like a McMansion owner in Riverview sleeping at Oak Island consistently, because that would be silly, right? So I guess I accept the assertion that enforcement across the board would occur, but it's also kind of self-evident that those enforcement scenarios would only apply to the poorest in the community. So perhaps that's less of a question than my commentary, but that's certainly how I feel about that assertion. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I have some comments. I live in Riverview, and I have talked to my neighborhood meetings, and we have a police officer that comes to Riverview meetings every month. And I will tell you that if there is somebody dealing drugs, they have been arrested in Riverview. If there is somebody that is disorderly or has broken into a house, they are arrested in Riverview. Criminal activity is not overlooked in Riverview, and that district has been brought up more than once, and we do not have just McMansions in Riverview. We have very working class, poor people. Riverview School has 50% free to reduced lunch. So if we're, please don't push one district against the other, because I expect from our police force that laws are enforced in every district. And I guess my question to Chief Barnes, is that true?
Yes. I mean, that's our job. We enforce the laws and the ordinances set by this council and the city and the laws of the state of Wisconsin. And my job as the chief of police and the leadership team has to take our resources and prioritize them for where in the community are they going to have the most impact and which is the most exigent situation at that time. There's more going on at the police department than just this issue. We have a lot of challenges facing our community. This is one of them. And this one just happens to be taking up a significant amount of time, and rightfully so, because it's having the most impact on people. Our officers have not lost their humanity, but we also recognize that we serve the whole community. And when we look at our downtown and the challenges that we hear from everyone that makes downtown their home or their business, we see now as the time to address that. And the exigency didn't just show up overnight. It showed up over the last 2 or 3 months, enough so that it's my job as your chief of police to come here and talk to you about what we're seeing. And nobody gets to come into my office and just tell me what the problems are, because they all know they get asked, well, what's your proposed solution? And that's what I'm doing here today, while acknowledging the limitations of the police department in this issue that is much larger than this. And I would echo some comments that I heard, that my hope is the next council and the next administration here really recognize that there is a role to be played and have as many robust conversations as necessary to set policy and lead this community in a direction that positively impacts all the things that we want to see for this population of individuals. Like, that's my hope.
Any other, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, thank you. And Alder McElhenney's questions there kind of lead into mine a little bit too, because I know in our Longfellow group we do see the community resource officers as a very helpful and valid way in engaging with the community. And I know that the residents in my district are concerned about crime that's happening within our district, and that which leads me into my question for Chief Barnes, in that you've got multiple officers that are pulled off their sectors, their routes, to go downtown to handle these issues and these behaviors, and then they're not in the place where they need to be. What are some of the negative consequences of that, where where officers are spending a significant amount of their time dealing with these issues downtown and not in the rest of the city?
I mean, to a point that was just brought up recently, there are all sorts of different calls our officers go to that, from a safety and officer safety and us taking care of employees, they're not single officer calls. Our officers ride around one cop, one squad, but there are domestic disturbances, for example. We send more than one police officer to those because of the hazard of that situation. So when our officers have been dispatched most recently into our downtown and to address issues at the library or in our parks or in our ramps, those are multiple officer calls. I know some of you that came to watch a video, you saw calls that took 5 or 6 officers. Well, why would it take 5 or 6 officers? Well, because there was a gun involved. And so we send everyone when that happens. So any of the regular policing that would normally occur in the different sectors that officers are assigned to throughout the city, those officers are drawn from there. That could have an impact on traffic safety and how much time officers, the more time they're outside their sector, the less time they have to run speed. I mean, it was a learning curve for me when I think about some of the major crimes that have impacted this community over the course of my decades here. And we'd be in the throes of an unsolved homicide and a serial arsonist lighting things on fire. And I went to a community group and I thought they were going to be really upset with us for not having that solved yet. And all they wanted to talk about was the people speeding down their street that are negatively impacting their quality of life. Like, there's less opportunity to do those things. Our officers are stretched thinner and thinner as we prioritize having to send multiple officers to what are becoming I would characterize as more dangerous interactions within our community with a portion of the unhoused population. Like, I have a responsibility that our officers get policies that keep them safe and how they respond, or as safe as possible. And so there is an impact. It is drawing. We have way more officers spending way more time in our downtown based on the calls for service there. And the officers that are responding are coming from the neighborhoods that they're assigned to police throughout the rest of the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And apparently, I think there was some confusion with my last comment. It was not geo-specific, so really not meant to really pertain to any particular geography in Wausau. It was not about neighborhoods, it was about socioeconomics. And so I can make it more clear when I was talking about how it wouldn't make sense that you'd be enforcing these types of things if individuals did not find themselves in a particular circumstance or a particular socioeconomic bracket. We can focus on that. I think in Wausau, the average household medium income is probably $46,000 to $49,000. So let's use like a little bit high. Let's go $100,000. So if there's someone from a household and it's, $100,000 or more a year, what percentage of people that police have had to kick out of the parks do you think have been above the $100,000 household bracket?
I don't think we've ever asked someone what their annual income is, but I understand your point, which is, do I think that's a very low number? Yes, I do.
Yeah,
but that makes sense to me. We're not naive to the point that the individuals that are behaving in manners that are reducing the quality of life in our downtown are lower income, if not no income.
Thank you. So yeah, I'd guess it's 0 as well. Now, in that same, socioeconomic bracket, the more affluent, how many in Wausau would you say don't have any access to a toilet at all day? I would guess it's 0. I'll just say that for the sake of brevity. And then lastly, how many people in town or family, household income, more affluent, don't have access to like a garbage can to dispose of trash within like a half a mile or so?
Well, I know within the geographic area we're talking about, the library or downtown, our parking ramps and in our parks, there are garbage cans. The city provides garbage cans on the sides of the street well within a half mile of any of those locations. So I think it would be fair to say that everyone in our community has access to garbage cans to throw their garbage away.
Well, thank you, and it's an interesting cluster of cans you mentioned downtown, because I walk Wausau every day when weather allows, generally about 5 miles a day, and in many areas of Wausau, like, you'd be lucky to find a garbage can within a half a mile or a mile. But I bring those up simply because clearly, like, anyone who is not extremely poor would not be doing those things. They wouldn't be sleeping in our parks. They wouldn't have to urinate outside. I mean, the city won't even put porta potties up, for goodness sake. I mean, and people complain about trash, yet, I've requested additional garbage cans, and they just don't happen. So, I bring that up because there are logical, low-cost tactics that could relieve a lot of these things that have been described. And I only brought up the socioeconomic questions, however rhetorical, because I think it kind of shows the absurdity that these laws and the enforcement would kind of apply to everyone on a day-to-day basis. They're really being executed and enforced on our poorest citizens. So I hope that clarifies that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on this subject?
Okay, thank you. The issues before this committee are pretty straightforward. It magnified into an issue of how we are dealing with our homelessness in this community. And a year and a half ago, there was a call for a committee of the whole. Not much came of that. City leaders didn't, and Alder Watson's proposal for some type of committee in the whole for the new administration. We'll see where that goes. I'm not sure where the city is, and or the city council is ready to pursue specific action with regard to our homeless population in the city. We'll try again after next week with a new city council and a new mayor. I will again try to call for a committee of the whole to, or the president of the council and or the mayor can call for a committee of the whole to again try to find answers for this city to address the issues of homelessness in our community. The chief outlines, the issues that are in front of us as well as the speakers this evening. So where do we go? I'm hesitant at this point in time to say, let's hire 2 additional patrolmen. I'm sure that this would be an issue that we may want to look at as a committee of the whole as part of the issue of dealing with it. But I think that we have to really look at the larger issues in trying purposely to solve the issues facing the homelessness in our community. And whether the city council and the city is ready for that, I'm not sure. I would hope they would be. There are a lot of suggestions coming forth tonight. So at this point in time, I am opting for a solution to be solved with the new city council and the change in city administration, right now I'm hesitant at this point in time to approve this but I certainly would be looking at this as part of a larger solution to the issue of homelessness in our community. I think just by picking one thing at a time, I don't think we're accomplishing what I want to accomplish is seriously addressing the issues of homelessness in this community. Thank you.
I have some comments. I work downtown. I've talked to Chief Barnes. I've talked to Mark Craig. And we, as a staff, are supposed to be parking in Jefferson Street ramp. We have been told as of January, because of issues with a knife, somebody chased with a knife, and other people grabbing females, that we cannot walk to that ramp unaccompanied. We had to go in groups. So that's an issue. Now, is that an unhoused issue or is that a criminal issue? I think somebody waving a knife and threatening somebody is a criminal issue. I don't see that as criminalizing homelessness or unhoused. I see that as dealing with a criminal issue. I think we're conflating here. I mean, do we need services of case managers, housing, transitional housing, alcohol and drug treatment? Yes. Do we need enforcement so people cannot be stabbed or poked with a needle or chased and grabbed, females being grabbed? Yes. Why is it an either or? That's what I don't understand. I know that going forward, we have other things to do, like Alder Gisselman has said, in looking at other things. I have questions about our statutorial, of getting a social service department. That, there are state statutes of how we can work through and where the shared revenue goes, and that might be county. County is starting to listen, and I know Chief Barnes has conversations with the county. But I don't see this as an either or. Either we're going to only get case management and then allow the criminal activity to continue, and it is criminal activity. And, and I'm sorry, it's unhoused. I would expect the same to happen if I call the police from my home on Ashland Avenue. I expect that they would respond and say, somebody is outside my house or chasing me when I'm walking my dog with a knife. I expect them to respond and take care of that, just like I do downtown. I don't see the difference in that. And I know Chief Barnes can show you that there are incidences all over the city with those type of criminal behaviors, and we have a police department to do that. He is saying that I need extra officers, and I have talked to him. He said, these officers are not just doing enforcement, they are going to try to connect to Tracy and track this. There is more being done. So I'm going to support this evening. Is anyone else want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, Liz Brodick, hang on.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to address the immediacy comment that was made earlier, and also just very much agree, Alder McElhaney, with what you were saying about this is not an either-or situation. This is a both-and answer that we need. We need the immediate enforcement of behaviors that are detrimental to our downtown businesses, and we need the compassionate, very holistic, long-term support that is truly right now outside of the realm of what the city can provide, and we need the committee of the whole to basically find a strategy to deal with this. To speak to the immediacy of the issue, the Wausau River District businesses are polled on an annual basis for comment or for concerns in the downtown. This should tell you something, because parking is on that list, and that, while it always is an issue, the issues with our folks experiencing homelessness was number 2. Almost half of our businesses are seeing detrimental effects of that, and it has been significantly bigger in the last, I'd say, year, I think it was. Then, for instance, when I was with River District, it was like a number 4 or 5 issue, and that was only 7 or 8 years ago. So this is an exacerbating issue. We are seeing the ripple effects throughout downtown. We still have significant office vacancy. This is not helping that. The Jefferson Street ramp, as you talked about, is a key component in the downtown revitalization strategy. We need that ramp to be safe and clean, and it is not right now, despite the best efforts of city workers, our police officers being in there, our DPW guys cleaning it up on a daily basis. And we can't keep it to the point where it needs to be able to recruit and retain businesses downtown, much less residents. In downtown, we need residential development, and we know that we are working on that. But it is a perpetual chicken and the egg problem. We can't attract the private investment that we need when these issues are going on, and the issues will continue to go until we attract that private investment in addition to the enforcement issues. So this is an economic issue that will affect not just the downtown Wausau, but the entire central Wisconsin region.
Alder Herbst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been silent for quite a while, and I'm not going to be silent anymore. I don't think the majority of the people sitting in the council chambers tonight or the rest of the residents in our city realize what is going on in this city. I had an opportunity to watch some videos. You wouldn't believe what you see. It's disgusting. Sex acts going on. Wallets, you think they don't have money? You open up a wallet, they got more money than I would probably earn in a year in this wallet as they're opening it up. I've seen the guns. I've seen the drinking. And heck, we'll just slide that liquor bottle across the floor for my buddy over there so he can take a couple of swallows. I see the drugs. And I'll tell you, millions of dollars are being spent downtown to make this a viable city. And as far as I'm concerned, we do not need this type of activity going on downtown. People are defecating all over, urinating, having the balls to take the fecal matter and put it on the cameras and put it on the knobs so that when people want to push the buttons to go in the elevator, they have this on their hands. Oh, it's nice, let me tell you. Go down there sometime and check it out. DPW comes in at 6 o'clock in the morning. They have to come in extra to clean up this mess. I also had the opportunity when this gun was displayed and officers were called early in the morning to this ramp. I would say at least a half a dozen officers came because this is kind of scary when somebody has a gun and shows this to his buddy when he comes in. I got a gun. As it turned out, it wasn't a real gun, but how would you know? I certainly wouldn't. It looked like a real gun to me. At this point, again, as Chief Barnes said, these officers that are here to protect us, keep us safe, keep our neighborhood safe, keep this city safe, are being pulled away from their sectors to deal with these people. And I will tell you, these officers come in and have compassion and humility, or I should say they treat these people as human beings as nice as you can possibly imagine. I have never seen, I know that they do it, they're soft-spoken, they're kind, they're wonderful, they're helpful, and they do treat the people with respect. I just will tell you point blank, you need to open your eyes to see what's going on. A lot of the people that are unhoused, or as you want to put it, in this city, are not all from Wausau. You've heard this before. They're being brought in the middle of the night and dropped off because, hey, Wausau's got all these things to offer to these people. And then you've got the party bus, or whatever you want to call it, enabling these people. I went down there one day last summer. It was interesting. Whatever they needed, it was there. I couldn't prove it, but I've been told that if an alcoholic comes there, they even have alcohol for them to keep them from going into withdrawals.
That is a lie, and it's called the Marty.
No, Dick.
not the party.
Sit firm, please.
That is a
Well,
lie.
That's enough, or you can
Point of
leave.
order, and the city's out of order, Madam Chair.
Well, I'm sorry that I called it the wrong type of bus. I told you I did not have the proof, but this is what I have heard. So bottom line,
That's why you weren't elected.
bottom line is you have to open your eyes. The people at city council have to open their eyes and realize what we do need are these additional officers, because we need 2 more people to address these situations and to help these people. No, we don't want to run them down. Absolutely not. I would want to be treated the same way if I was a homeless person. And I'll tell you, these officers that we have on board now, and I know that the ones that are coming on board, hopefully, and without a doubt, I feel they should be, are going to be just very wonderful, as all our officers we are. And if they have to be in touch with Tracy, that's good, because Tracy could mentor them as well, because she cannot be in all places all the time. But you need to understand what does go on in the city, and it has to stop. Thank you.
Do you,
So one additional comment that, as I've been sitting here, and I want to make, it's been brought up several times. It was based on a motion that was made in the Public Health and Safety Committee, but you're the HR committee, and this is an HR issue, so I want to circle back, which is this position is not a permanent addition to the Wausau Police Department. This is, has a sunset of December 31st, 2025, with a plan of evaluating effectiveness. Like, did this create a more positive experience downtown? Are we moving the ball forward? Are we moving the ball back? Did this work? And if it doesn't work, then this council has the ability to not fund it moving forward. We have the ability to not ask for it. So this is an opportunity to use foundation dollars, or 2/3 would be foundation dollars, but there's a sunset. So this is not a permanent addition to the city. We want to see, can we improve the quality of life downtown? And it'll be up to our constituents, your constituents, and yourselves to make that assessment, probably at or about the budget term 2025. Thank you.
okay, I'm going to go with Alder Martins first, and then Alder Gisselman, because he had his hand up before.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments here this evening, because originally I was on the fence about adding 2 new police officers to the department. I was questioning the need for something like this. Why do we need to grow the force? But in having discussions, a very robust discussion with the chief, in talks with our neighborhood group, in talks with the residents at Riverview Tower, Riverview Terrace. We had some listening sessions there last fall. And one of the things that really concerns the people in my district is crime. And like I've mentioned earlier, that we've had successful operations in our community, shutting down drug houses and keeping speeds on the roadways within reason. And that's something that's important to our residents in our community. As for the Riverview Terrace, one of their big concerns, well, number 1 is transit. Number 2 is what is going on in Hammond Park. For the towers and the terrace, Hammond Park is their front yard, and they don't like what they're seeing in their front yard. And this is something that would be able to address things like that, these types of issues, these types of behaviors. It's nothing more than community policing. We've got officers in the area, on the streets, working with these issues, working with these behaviors, and try to move the needle forward to give us the time that, as a body, we need in order to make a more substantial type of solution to address the unhoused and homelessness. I mean, as it stands right now, I don't have a lot of faith that we're going to get anything done if we don't have any kind of commitment or buy-in with the county. I don't have any kind of faith, that things are going to happen with tiny homes or transitional housing if we, as a body, always acquiesce to the NIMBYs in regard to zoning issues in our city. So what are we going to do? Well, this is an interim solution or interim method to address these issues so that we can get things under control and move in a more thoughtful manner. So I will be supporting the addition of the 2 police officers.
Gary, first, then you.
Yes, thank you. Question, these two, when they're hired, they would be members of the union, I would trust.
Yes.
So that I'm not sure if the union, my question would be a sunsetting of a union position, I think would be up to negotiations, I would think. But I'm just curious about how, or I'm wondering how we can sunset 2 positions within the union without the union. I just have that question.
Well, what would happen is when people retire, then they would fill those positions, so we could eliminate those. Correct, Matt?
Yeah, so, I don't see a union issue here, as I've looked at it from multiple directions, to include communication with the union president.
No,
but if we're overstaffed, if it sunsets and instead of having 79 authorized positions, we're at 81, then as we deal with the next 2 retirements wouldn't be filled. So historically speaking, our retirements the vast majority of them come in January of a particular year. So that would be our intention, but is there risk that there may be a couple of months where we're overstaffed until attrition can, and maybe your question is, I'm not going to lay anyone off.
I'm not concerned about that, but when you say that it sunsets December of 2025, that means basically, unless those positions are looked at again, those positions have to be looked at again with regard to the situations that's in the city. I'm just trying to clear. I understand the issue with regard to retirements and filling, keeping the post at 7. I understand that. I was just wondering, trying to be an innocent question with regard to how this plays
In the
a sunset
system,
position within the union.
So the discussion at Public Health and Safety was that we are going to take a look as we go along, like every so many months, we're going to get benchmarks. I'm a data person, we're going to get benchmarks, we're going to get reports, we're going to talk to Tracy, what's working, what's not, tweaking that. And that was the plan, that before 2025, the end of that position through the foundations, we were going to have a talk about, is this a program we want to continue? And then we can have that discussion, or is this not? And then we would use those positions through attrition. That was kind of the plan. So there are scheduled discussions before the end of 2025 to see if this program is something that we want to continue, and then we would have to look at, Public Health and Safety would recommend it and how we'd fund it or whatever.
But and would those recommendations come to HR then also?
Yes.
Just an innocent question. I didn't know how that would be handled. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it's come up multiple times tonight from citizens and the body about, crime versus crime specifically related to the unhoused. And the question was raised, why is this debate or what was referred to as maybe conflation. Why is that occurring? And the reason it's occurring is because it was made very clear by the police department and earlier committees that this wasn't just about addressing crime. This was about addressing crime specifically with the unhoused, primarily in downtown. So, I've supported the police on most requests in 4 years. I did not support like mass surveillance without a warrant. I didn't support buying like tear gas and riot gear to potentially use on our own people. But that's because, we're Wisconsinites and Americans. But on reasonable, legitimate requests, I have supported them. This was never couched as help us address just, segments of violent crime. I would have perhaps been willing to look at that and support it, but it has, to date, it's been couched specifically and explicitly about one socioeconomic segment. And maybe while I had some rhetorical sarcasm earlier, it was because it is self-evident that crime of any type of category is not really related to one socioeconomic group, and certainly not alcoholism. I mean, in Wisconsin, we've got, the Trinity, Packers, cheese, and alcoholism. What percentage of adults housed or unhoused are alcoholics in Wausau? I'd say a hell of a lot of them. And so I wanted to make that clear. This is the focus on one socioeconomic group, and I was rather stunned to hear the insinuation that somehow it's poverty and the poor that are, retarding growth and development downtown. I mean, Madam Chair, you've been on the council longer than I have, but clearly from a factual history, it has not been poverty. How many deals have exploded? Due to just poor planning, poor execution, or an orgy of incompetence on the government's part. It was not because of poor people that any of that occurred. And some who insinuated that tonight had actually come and told us years ago that we should support giving CBL $4 million on the abortive mall deal. That was before CBL, filed for bankruptcy and was investigated by the FBI, none of which had anything to do with poor people. I wanted to mention that. And earlier, a citizen brought up, how is this legal and constitutional? Well, actually, great question. It's not constitutional. So there's something called the Eighth Amendment, and we've got a case coming up on April 22nd to the Supreme Court. It's Johnson versus Grants Pass, and this committee and the public should write that down and Google it, Grants Pass, Supreme Court, because what the hope is that court will overturn the precedent that doing what's suggested, kicking people off of public lands when they have nowhere to go, currently that's a violation of the Eighth Amendment. It's cruel and unusual punishment. Now, some are hoping the courts overturn that. That will start on April 22nd, but let's be clear, like another citizen said, this is not political. I mean, no liberal, conservative, or centrist is going to buy into that. This is a government overreach. If that precedent is overturned, we will see an authoritarian crackdown, and this is the prelude and load up for that. Make no mistake, no one's told the public that. Maybe they should be told that. So, yes, this has nothing to do with helping our citizens, particularly combined with the Supreme Court case, Grants Pass. This will likely lead to an authoritarian tiptoe and crackdown. This will not help our community with the widespread mental health issues, drug and alcohol addictions. We talked about getting county board buy-in on what? On doing what they're legally bound to do? How have they done on mental health treatment? How's that going? How about drug and alcohol treatment due to COVID and their expansion of putting on, their fancy restaurant? There wasn't even for 3 years. Most of those inpatient treatments were shut down. So talk to the county board about buy-in on what? So if the county board buy-in is suddenly we're going to do what we're statutorily obliged to do, we're going to provide mental health care at North Central Health Care and alcohol and drug addiction treatment, not just paninis, then yes, let's talk to them about that. But we are forcing our poorest citizens out of public space, and this is completely inappropriate, and unless the courts change their mind, I'd say borderline unconstitutional. So I certainly will not support this, and I believe Alder Watson did have one thing right. The city should have a committee of the whole to actually form an overarching policy on how it addresses matters with the unhoused, because it has no policy. So it wasn't just the earlier economic development failures that I inventoried. This administration and city has also failed on developing an overarching policy with the unhoused that is both just and legal, and it's time the city has one, so I hope that occurs next term. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. No, I'm sorry. We only can allow public comment. Thank you. Okay, so we are now looking at discussion of possible action of addition to police officer positions for the Wausau Police Department. Is there a motion on the floor? Motion by Herb, second. Second by Martins. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
This passes 3-2. Thank you. Okay, on to the next. Discussion of possible action approving the employee agreement for course fees paid by the City of Wausau to obtain Class A or Class B commercial driver's license.
This was brought forward through our DPW department. We do sponsor employees to get their CDL licenses, be a A license for the Public Works or B license for utilities. So this is a pretty common practice where we do request time commitment to the city. We do that with police and fire, so if you would leave under 3 years, we would ask for some form of reimbursement for them to get those licensures. Again, this is pretty common practice through every industry that I've worked in and everything else. It kind of is a safeguard of the city putting in money and investing in an employee where they have some skin in the game versus where they just get the licensure and then they leave. So again, it's a little bit more of a skin in the game for the employees.
Go ahead, Mike.
I guess I'm a little bit surprised that when we started paying for CDL training a couple, 3 years ago, that we did not automatically do this as a matter of course.
Yeah.
Because I know you mentioned precedent, the fire department is paying paramedic training, and we do require a time commitment. So I make a motion that we approve of this, I think it was addition employee handbook section 4.08 CDL repayment commitment.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
The
that's
next one,
the fourth
which
one.
is,
Mhm.
I guess, I don't know why there's two different ones here. So,
course fee paid by the city of Wausau to obtain the Class A or B commercial driver's license.
yeah, okay, that sounds good.
And one is the agreement, and then one is the
handbook.
handbook change.
Yeah, so do we have a second for that? Second by Gisselman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, so now we're on the discussion of possible action approving the addition of employee handbook section 4.08 CDL repayment commitment. This is just codifying it in the handbook.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Gisselman, second by Martins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Last one is we're bringing this back because the term starts next week. Discussion and possible action approving the revision of the role and responsibilities of the Human Resource Committee. It's been in your packet. Is there any issues that, let's see.
Well, well,
Go ahead, Gary.
well, what exactly is,
Well, here they have, so,
what exactly is being presented? I don't see that I think what is being presented is just pretty much documentation with regards to what it says today. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I think this is, I'll ask, Ann, do you have, this is just what we had last month?
This is exactly what you had last month, in addition to the sample that I had submitted of the City of Madison ordinance that I think I sent out a couple days after. Yeah. The last committee, just as an example that some communities include the duties in their ordinances, and we don't have to do that. It can be formatted differently. What I probably intend to do now is for your organizational meeting, put together a resolution with the proposed descriptions of the duties of all the committees, and then present it as a resolution to the council, and you all can decide whether you accept those as the duties of the committee, and then we'll again use that to put on the website. So I didn't see anything really too out of alignment with human resources, but you had more references to consider because you've got not only the code, but you've got the employee handbook. So I just wanted you to be sure of all the places where the Human Resources Committee appeared, and if there was anything that you thought was new to you that you hadn't seen before, that you hadn't been doing, or maybe didn't think you should continue to do, we can clean that up. But really, for the most part, I didn't have any glaring recommendations with regard to clarifying anything that I found. I just wanted to find everything and share it with you and see if you had a preference over putting the duties in a resolution or in an ordinance form.
I guess I brought this up last month. One of it is that we are considered as part of, with the mayor, to provide a formal opportunity to discuss mutual concerns, goals, and objectives for all officers appointed.
Yes.
I mean, we don't do that. I haven't done that for 8 years on this committee.
I've never seen it happen in the 26
So,
years
I
I've been
mean,
here.
maybe we should take that Human Resources Committee out. I believe the mayor does that within, I don't know, like reviews.
Well,
Go ahead, Gary.
well, that's a good question. Is that clearly identified then as mayor responsibility with regard to, because somebody should have that responsibility if it's not clearly outlined under the function of the mayor, then it does come back to HR, I would think. So maybe that has to be more, because if it's not a mayoral function, I would think it would be an HR committee. I mean, we had talked about that for a while ago, so.
It's already codified, it's in the ordinance, so it says both mayor and the Human Resources Committee, so that's together.
So you're thinking of taking that,
I would like to take Human Resources Committee out of 2.06.0 or .050, and then 2.10.050. There's two of them in there, and then 2.12.040 again is this, there. It's really kind of repetitive. I think those three should take the Human Resources Committee out. If we're not doing that, and you've not done that, seen that in 23 years, I don't see why that should be in there.
Well, agreed, and those are all, you hit the three ordinances that describe that.
Right.
The 206050 would involve all department directors, which the mayor would discuss these things with. 2.10050 are non-enumerated appointments, so those may not be people the mayor directly supervises or would be evaluating anyway. And I'd have to look up the list under 212040 as well. That would be like street superintendent or city planner or city engineer, titles like that, that the mayor would not be supervising directly necessarily or interviewing. 206050, the mayor position would be talking to those department directors.
do people agree with that? Otherwise, I mean, I think we should either do it or take it out. I don't know how we even do that. Do we just have somebody up here? And I don't even know how that would work.
It would be interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd have to notice the meeting as an
Yeah.
open meeting, and I'm thinking those would be open session.
Wouldn't those have to be a closed session, though, because that would, that matter,
Well,
could
I
be a
don't know.
personnel matter?
But
So,
if we're
but
not, I don't, it's an interview, so I don't know.
I'd have to look at the exact language, but right, this is just an opportunity to discuss mutual concerns, goals, and objectives. It's not talking about disciplinary matters or things that are listed specifically in the statute as authorized closed session exemptions. So without further research, I'm not willing to stand here and say that these would all be closed session discussions. Maybe, maybe not. I've never seen it happen, so if it's something that you don't want to entertain in the future, I could have this ordinance amendments drafted up for the next council meeting as a cleanup on the 16th
26.
at the organizational meeting,
Could it come,
or the council meeting on the 23rd with the new committee descriptions and ordinance amendments to these three.
Go ahead, Gary.
should it come back to this committee for a final look at?
That's up to you all, whether you want it to come back. That's perfectly fine with me.
And it
We
can
don't
take,
know.
it can take its time winding through the city council once the new city council, but I would think we would want to, I would think the new HR committee would want to take a look at that, one final look at. But that's just me speaking. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
I mean, so you don't want to make a final decision tonight? I guess my personal view is this hasn't been done for over 23 years. I don't see it as something that I mean, unless somebody is really, really ready to do this, I don't know what that would look like.
Okay, so be it then.
Okay. This is,
Yeah, I guess my bigger question was, is this something that maybe we should be doing? But then I'm getting kind of hung up on the mechanics of
I
it.
know, I don't even
So
know. I think it
that's-
could be an ugly situation.
Yeah, so maybe that's something that we don't, I mean, I can understand the, the want to discuss mutual concerns, goals, and objectives, and I think that might be, a great way to kind of, plan our, plan like maybe a strategy or something like that, but wouldn't that already be in, say, like our comprehensive plan or the,
Strategic plan, or?
Yeah, or what, or the other types of, our that strategy, that 5-year strategy that we just went through. So maybe that's.
I also think that we talk to department heads or anybody as they come up and discuss their problems, or like if it's staffing, I don't know, I think that we do that. Maybe not formally.
Formally, right.
But when they have problems and they need more staff or they need something, equipment, I think that we do hear from that. So I think that we never have not heard from
And in
any of the staff.
re-looking at these, Madam Chair, I'm going to correct myself a little bit here. I mean, I said 206050, the mayor does directly speak with those department heads. 2.10.050, it says annually by the mayor, the appointing authority. So, that would still be up to the person holding that position to reach out to those, maybe that they don't perform annual evaluations annually, just to discuss mutual concerns, objectives, and goals. And the mayor position isn't even mentioned in 2.12040. So I think that you could remove the reference to the Human Resources Committee in all three of those without much effect or impact, because the committee hasn't done that in the past.
I mean, that would be my only suggestion, but
Okay.
it's up to the whole council, the whole committee. Do we need to take a vote, do you think?
Well, I would prefer that you make a recommendation, but then
Right.
I'm wondering is if it's not on the council, if these amended ordinances are not on the council agenda for tomorrow night, we're already short of the 24-hour notice. And then as Dawn pointed out, does it go to the organizational meeting on the 16th or to the first meeting of the new term on the 23rd?
I would think the first meeting of the term. I don't,
Which could be
'Cause it's
a
council
different
business, yeah,
HR committee, but it's still a recommendation from the HR committee. That's
Yeah.
fine with me too, however you folks want it. But I think you do need to vote
Okay.
to make a recommendation to council to amend an ordinance.
okay,
You do.
okay. Well, do we have any motion for that?
But the agenda item says approving the revision of the role of a responsible, so what document or what is that we're approving? What is the action with regard to revision of the role? And is there a revision presented in front of us? That would have been part of the agenda.
No, there's not a rewriting of the duties of the HR committee.
So what revision are, according to the agenda, then what?
Just amendments to the ordinance would be the revision, changing the duties, relieving the HR committee of those 3 duties in the ordinances.
And we can do that by the
The agenda wording?
yes.
What, can you read, I don't have that up here with me, I'm sorry. Could somebody read
can
that to
read
me
it.
again, please?
Discussion and possible action approving the revision of the role and responsibilities of the Human Resources Committee.
Yeah, I think that applies under there. I will put ordinance amendments on the council agenda. But on the second page of this, the description from the 1966 resolution personnel committee of what you do, I don't think I would change anything from that in describing what your committee does.
Okay.
So I would probably include that paragraph in the upcoming resolution, unless you have any changes to that or any discussion of that paragraph, in addition to the ordinance amendments that you're suggesting be made.
So, do people feel comfortable to make a motion to remove those, the use of Human Resources Committee in those ordinances?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Martins, second by Herbst. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes, Ann, so.
Thank you.
we're done. Okay. So, I think we're done. Okay, motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Killian and second by Mr. Martins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.